In the small, bustling town of Crestwood, there was one place everyone knew, the Café Marigold. With its warm yellow walls and large windows that let in the soft morning sun, the cafe was a favorite spot for locals to gather. Early risers came for their first coffee. Office workers sought refuge during lunch breaks, and retirees enjoyed their afternoon tea. The hum of friendly chatter filled the air each day, and for years, it had been a place where kindness and routine walked hand in hand. Yet, beneath the surface of this seemingly peaceful spot, a shadow loomed, the presence of Richard Cartwright, the wealthy and notoriously rude millionaire who visited every morning without fail. Richard Cartwright was the owner of a sprawling real estate empire, his name synonymous with success and power. But inside the walls of Café Marigold, he was something else entirely. He was feared. It's not because he was violent or dangerous, but because of his cutting words, impatient glare, and the way he belittled anyone who dared to cross him. Every morning, at exactly 9 a.m., Richard would stroll in, wearing his tailored suits and an expression so cold it seemed to freeze the air. The moment he entered, the entire cafe seemed to hush. The waiters would nervously adjust their uniforms, and the customers would lower their voices, as if even speaking too loudly might provoke his wrath. Richard never liked being kept waiting, and he expected nothing less than perfection. If his coffee was not brewed just right, he would snap at the barista. If the sugar wasn't exactly on the side, he would scowl at the waitress. His rude demands and sarcastic remarks had become a daily routine, a kind of dark ritual that everyone endured silently. For years, no one dared to challenge him. The staff had tried to keep their heads down and do their jobs quickly, avoiding eye contact whenever Richard was near. After all, the cafe's owner had made it clear he valued Richard's business above all else. Losing him as a customer was unthinkable, and so the fear settled in like a thick fog, blanketing the cafe that was until Jasmine Taylor walked through the doors. Jasmine was new to Crestwood. She had recently moved from a neighboring city after graduating from college, full of hope and determination. She had taken the job as a waitress at Café Marigold to support herself while applying for positions in her chosen field, social work. Jasmine was unlike anyone the cafe had seen before. At 24, with her radiant smile and confident stride, she carried herself with a quiet strength. She was proud of her heritage, her dark skin glowing under the cafe's warm lights, and she refused to let anyone's attitude dim her spirit. On her first day, Jasmine noticed the tension immediately. The staff warned her quietly about Richard Cartwright, his temper, his rudeness, the way he could make even the most patient person lose their calm. But Jasmine wasn't easily intimidated. The next morning, as she adjusted her uniform and prepared for her shift, Jasmine felt a mix of nerves and excitement. She was ready to prove herself to be kind but firm and to make the cafe a better place, even if only in small ways. When Richard entered that day, Jasmine was serving tables near the front. She noticed the usual hush descend. The barista rushed over with his coffee, but Jasmine's eyes met Richard's with steady calm. She smiled politely and greeted him. "Good morning, Mr. Cartwright. What can I get for you today?" Richard's lips curled into a thin, impatient line. "The usual. Black coffee. No sugar. And make sure it's hot." "I don't want any of that lukewarm nonsense." Jasmine nodded. "Of course, sir." She moved quickly to relay the order to the barista, who glanced nervously at Jasmine. When the coffee was ready, Jasmine brought it to Richard's table. She placed it carefully in front of him and said, "Here you go, Mr. Cartwright. Fresh and hot, just the way you like it." Richard picked up the cup and took a sip. His face tightened slightly, but Jasmine held his gaze with quiet confidence. "You're new here, aren't you?" he said, his voice tinged with curiosity, but still edged with that coldness. "Yes. Sir, I just started last week," Jasmine replied calmly. Richard leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You don't seem intimidated?" Jasmine smiled softly. "I believe everyone deserves respect, Mr. Cartwright, and I expect to give it just as I expect to receive it." The words hung in the air, unexpected and firm. Richard raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Over the next few days, something began to change in the cafe. Jasmine's presence was like a fresh breeze, stirring the stagnant air. She treated every customer with kindness, regardless of their status or attitude. When Richard was rude, she didn't retaliate with anger, but responded with calm professionalism that surprised even him. One afternoon, Richard ordered a pastry that had just sold out. The usual waiter would have muttered under his breath or rushed off to find a replacement. But Jasmine approached Richard with a genuine apology and an offer. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Cartwright. That pastry just sold out, but may I suggest our fresh blueberry muffins? They're made this morning and quite popular." Richard frowned, but nodded slowly. "Fine, bring me one." When Jasmine returned with the muffin, she placed it in front of him and said, "On the house, sir." "I hope you enjoy it?" Richard stared at the muffin for a moment, then took a bite. The surprise was clear on his face. The muffin was delicious. From that day on, Richard's mornings at the cafe became less tense. He still carried his sharp words, but there was a subtle shift. He asked Jasmine for her opinion on the pastries. He even laughed quietly when she teased him about his choice of boring black coffee. But not everyone welcomed the change. The other waiters whispered behind Jasmine's back. Some felt she was too bold, too outspoken. They feared what might happen if she crossed the powerful Richard Cartwright. "Why take the risk?" they asked. He's a millionaire. You're just a waitress." Jasmine understood their fear. She too was cautious. But she also knew that fear had no place in a job where dignity and respect mattered. One afternoon, the tension exploded. Richard had arrived in a particularly bad mood. A client had canceled a major deal, and his frustration spilled over. Slammed his hand on the table and snapped at the staff for the slightest mistakes. When Jasmine approached his table with his order, Richard's voice was harsher than usual. "Watch how you place the coffee, girl. I don't want it sloshing everywhere." Jasmine met his glare steadily. "Mr. Cartwright, I place it carefully because I respect your time and your business. I ask only that you respect the people who serve you." The cafe fell silent. Customers turned their heads. The waiters froze mid-step. Richard's face turned red with anger. "You don't talk to me like that." "I'm not here to argue," Jasmine replied calmly. "I'm here to work with dignity. If that doesn't suit you, then maybe you should reconsider how you treat others." Richard stood up, towering over Jasmine. For a tense moment, it seemed he might say something worse, but then, slowly he sat back down and said quietly, "You're different." "Yes, sir, I am," Jasmine said, standing tall. Word spread quickly about the confrontation. Some customers applauded Jasmine's courage. Others worried about the consequences. The cafe owner, Mrs. Langston, called Jasmine into her office. After the shift, Jasmine braced herself. "Jasmine," Mrs. Langston said gently, "you surprised me today. Richard Cartwright is a difficult man, but he is also a key client. I'm not sure how this will play out." Jasmine nodded. "I understand, ma'am, but I believe standing up for respect is more important than fear." Mrs. Langston smiled, a new respect in her eyes. "You're right. Maybe the cafe needs a change." Days passed. Richard continued to visit, and while his rudeness didn't disappear completely, something had shifted between him and Jasmine. The fear that once gripped the cafe began to loosen. One morning, Richard surprised everyone by asking Jasmine to join him for coffee after the cafe closed. Jasmine was hesitant, but agreed. In the quiet cafe, Richard spoke in a softer voice. "You know, I've never met anyone who stood up to me like that. Most people just took it." Jasmine listened as he shared stories of his difficult childhood, the pressure of his business, and the loneliness that came with wealth. "I've been rude because I'm scared," he admitted. "Scared of being weak, scared of being vulnerable." Jasmine nodded. It takes strength to admit that, and strength to change. Over the following months, Richard's visits became less about business and more about genuine connection. He apologized to the staff for his harsh words and even complimented Jasmine's work ethic. The cafe itself changed. The staff grew bolder, more confident. Customers felt the warmth return, no longer overshadowed by fear. And Jasmine, she became more than a waitress, became a symbol of courage and change, a reminder that dignity and respect can break down even the tallest walls of fear. In the end, Café Marigold was no longer just a place where people gathered for coffee. It was a place where kindness won over cruelty, where a young woman's courage reshaped the hearts of a town, and where the rude millionaire learned the true meaning of respect.